Back in Halloween of last year, I took a look at Luigi's Mansion because I had recently played it at the time and honestly fell in love with it. Also, it was October, so it was basically the perfect time to make a video on it. My verdict in that video was that I felt the game was awesome, but I'd like to amend that statement. You see, at that point, I'd only played the game twice. Now I've beaten the game at least 6 times, and well, I've only begun to appreciate it even more. In fact, I genuinely consider this game one of my favorite games of all time. I know those are very bold words, especially when you look at what I also consider my all-time favorites, but as I've been replaying this game, I've realized that this is a game that I can play through and greatly enjoy myself for the entire duration. It's one of those games that I know almost everything about, and love every part of it. I mean, it's not perfect. When blues have like 300 HP, they can get slightly irritating, but man, I love all the personality in this game, from Luigi, Gadd, and all the unique portrait ghosts. I even love the soundtrack because when there is actual music playing, it makes me want to dance, dude. I know I critiqued it for being somewhat repetitive, but I love the gameplay loop, and sucking up ghosts is something I'll never tire of. It's more complicated than people give it credit for, since there is room to learn with the combat here. Efficiently sucking up ghosts is really about jerking the analog stick multiple times away from the ghost, which is a high risk, high reward situation. The game rewards you for becoming a master at combat by rewarding you with more pearls, which contribute to your overall money count. I couldn't give this game enough credit for its replayability in my review because I only played it twice, but now I can say this game is very replayable. I'll put it up there with Castle Crashers for having some of the best replay value I've ever seen in a video game. It's all about collecting as much money as possible, which actually doesn't give you a reward. Money is basically your high score, and it's more than just checking every piece of furniture. It's about getting so good at the combat that you can suck up portrait ghosts in one suck to get a gold frame. It's about being willing to take risks and seek out speedy spirits, which are ghosts that are actually pretty hard to catch but give you a good cash prize. If you fail, then it's gone forever. That's assuming you don't know the GameCube has a reset button. Like Eminem said, you only get one shot, do not miss your chance to suck. It's also about being brave enough to look for the speedy spirits that are exclusively available during the blackout, where ghosts are spawning everywhere, and there's a lot of them too. There are some secrets you'll learn over time, like where to find all the golden mice, the fact that this little plant over here gives you a little gem worth $20 million, and much more. On top of that, the gameplay is already so fun that I'd want to replay it anyway. I understand that not everyone loves this game as much as I do, but I can't help myself. This game is a damn masterpiece. So yeah, I just wanted to get that off my chest. I also got to play the 3DS Remake, and I have mixed feelings about it. For some reason, they thought to themselves, yeah, let's put this game that was meant to showcase 2 analog sticks on a portable with 1. That's gonna work. And it's not like they're making a sequel like with Dark Moon, where they could alter the formula to make that work. They were remaking a game, so such options are not really available. The main reason I don't really like this version is the control. The 3DS doesn't have the second circle pad, so aiming while sucking up ghosts is pretty inconvenient. They tried to make it better with additions like the gyroscope, using the D-pad at a standstill, and using the B button to use sidestep mode or changing Luigi's direction while aiming entirely. It may sound complicated, and to be honest, it's not, but it's still inconvenient. Even the new 3DS second circle pad feels very stubborn, and the GameCube controller allows for much more precision. And on top of that, the circle pad doesn't feel nearly as satisfying to capture ghosts with. It genuinely feels less precise too. Sometimes I lose my grip because shaking the stick in one direction is a lot harder with the tiny circle pad. I think the addition of the stroll ball was meant to complement the crippled control, since it gives your flash a much bigger radius, but it doesn't feel like this game was designed with it in mind because it wasn't, so I just prefer the normal flashlight. Also, I was hoping you would be able to fast forward text in this version, but no. Replayability was heavily integrated into the design of Luigi's Mansion, so it only makes sense. Instead, you have to watch the same 4 cutscene every time after a boss, sit through all of Madame Clairvoyant's dialogue to suck her up, and the beginning of the game is longer too. They make you grab this part for the Game Boy Horror for literally no reason, and they use this cutscene with non-skippable dialogue to try and shove co-op down your throat on every playthrough. And why is co-op in this game? Luigi's Mansion never struck me as a game that's perfect for co-op, and unlike the Scare Scraper game modes in later entries where the gameplay is altered for multiplayer, to my knowledge, this is the campaign we know and love. I never got to try it out, but I heard it also runs really poorly. This port doesn't detract from the fact that Luigi's Mansion is still an all-time favorite of mine, but I can say with confidence this is the inferior version. Besides very minor improvements like the money counter, the gallery not being awkward, and that weird ass blue losses glitch being fixed, it makes the control pretty annoying at times, and that's with the new 3DS model. I don't see any reason to choose this one over the GameCube if you have that as an option, because I think the neutered control overshadows a little improvements, and the original game is still amazing. It didn't need a remake. Should have just put it on Switch, but whatever. Anyways, the first Luigi's Mansion game was quite successful. Not only was it the best-selling launch title on the console, it even had a better launch than Mario 64, but it also gained a cult following. At the time, most critics agreed it was fun and all, but was too short since their job didn't allow them to sink a lot of time into replaying games. For around a decade, it never received a sequel, so it was seen as that one weird Mario spin-off, and that gave it a cult following, because a lot of people really liked the game. It never saw a sequel until 2013, which was coined the Year of Luigi. I always use this in my arguments as to why Luigi is objectively better than Mario, because Mario can't say he's had a year of Mario. This year gave us New Super Luigi U, the DLC for NSMBU that is often praised as the best NSMB game, which I also want to play but already sold my copy of NSMBU Deluxe, as well as Mario and Luigi Dream Team, a Mario and Luigi game that's about going into Luigi's dreams, and is also a game I own but haven't gotten around to yet, and lastly Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Okay, I think we've gone on long enough, even though I spend most of the time talking about the first game, but anyways, let's just dive right in. Okay, so what's the plot this time? Well, Professor Gadd is off doing his ghost research as usual in Evershade Valley. He also has the ghosts help him because in this location they're apparently friendly. That is, until King Boo emerges from his painting that Gadd sold at a fucking garage sale and shatters the Dark Moon, the object that pacifies the ghosts of Evershade Valley, so now they're hostile. Gadd swiftly contacts Luigi and basically forces him to help him with the situation. I mean, we all know Luigi is enough of a Chad to want to help him, especially when he later learns that King Boo trapped Mario in a painting again, but it's not like Luigi had much of a say in this at first. He was kind of just doing Egadd's chores. Basically, it's up to Luigi to restore the Dark Moon with the help of Gadd and save Evershade Valley, as well as Mario. I thought they were gonna ditch the captured Mario thing at first, but no, they didn't, which I don't really care about, but this basically solidifies that every game in the series will likely involve saving Mario from a painting. The first game did Luigi's character very well by establishing a concrete personality for him, unlike his brother, and this game carries the torch by having great characterization for Luigi. In fact, I'd say it's even better because Luigi is very expressive in this game. We get a lot of cutscenes of Luigi just doing stuff, and he's still a scaredy cat, in addition to being a little dumber than in the first game, but it's a change I don't really mind because he was always a joy to watch in Dark Moon. These cutscenes are great stuff. Some people have also complained that he acts like much more of a coward against the weakest ghosts, unlike the first game, but it's a change I don't really care about. He's entertaining, that's what matters to me. However, this game is still kinda lacking in personality and charm when compared to the first game, since Luigi and Gadd are basically the only characters. Remember all those portrait ghosts who had a ton of personality with their own unique characteristics? Gone. Also, the spooky atmosphere is gone. Like I said in my review, it is not a game that intends to spook you, but it has a spooky atmosphere thanks to the sinister attitudes of the ghosts and Luigi's reactions. In Dark Moon, most ghosts are mischievous little individuals who are always giggling and being all goofy. Maybe I should have played this game when I was 5 to 6 years old instead of the first game, which I was too scared to play. Even if Luigi has more personality than ever, it still falters in trying to match the bar set by the first game's personality due to the lack of characters in the atmosphere. I'd still say the first game has a better premise, but this game does Luigi's character better at the expense of sacrificing all the other charming characters. But who cares about the story? That's not what you're playing the game for. In the first game, you were in a singular mansion as you would explore, catch ghosts, and solve a few puzzles to unlock keys to new rooms. Dark Moon does something a little more interesting by having 5 different mansions, and each one is visually distinct. The first one is your standard mansion, but the others include a greenhouse, a clock factory, and a cabin in a frozen tundra with an underground mine. I don't mind this new approach, in fact I quite like it. It is true that the first game's haunted mansion definitely gave off more of a spooky atmosphere, but this game already ditched that because of the silly ghosts and removal of things like Luigi humming to himself in the dark halls with the spooky music. This divides the game more clearly than the areas of the first game, but to divide the game even more, it's broken up into missions. Basically, instead of being able to explore as much of the mansion as you have unlocked, you'll be sent back to Gadd's lab after clearing some objectives, which can range from 10 to 25 minutes long. Why did they do this? Because you gotta remember, this is a 3DS game. Since this is a portable, they acknowledge the possibility of people only playing for bite-sized sessions because, for all they know, you could be at a bus stop or something with your 3DS, so they went with this mission-based approach. Basically, if you play your 3DS at your house for long sessions, you're doing it wrong! I don't really blame them for putting it on 3DS because their only other option was... But we also already had a Year of Luigi game on 3DS. I'm not a huge fan of this approach for 2 reasons. 1, What's the point? I think the game is already divided enough with 5 different mansions, and the locations don't change much between missions. You can explore as much as you have unlocked either way, and you're mostly just forced to retread the same ground. If they wanted to have missions, at the very least, they didn't have to kick you out and force you to listen to Gadd explain what you have to do before each mission, which is fortunately skippable, and in fact I recommend it. You could just get calls from Gadd which would assign you a mission, and once you clear the mission, you'll get another call instructing you on what to do. Now for reason number 2, what do you mean the first game structure couldn't work on a portable? Oh, it's because that game would just never work on a handheld. Don't look at me. Okay, so in the first game, it is divided into 4 different areas, but you can still have bite-sized play sessions because you get to save very often in that game. Basically after every room. Gadd lets you save after catching a boo, which will probably happen every time you clear a room, so having to commit to playing for long periods isn't a thing here. Also, there are toads that let you save in multiple parts of the mansion, so if they didn't want to implement boos or make them function differently, they could have just placed toads or things that let you save. Or how about just an option in the menu to let you save? The structure didn't have to take a hit just because the game is on a handheld. Speaking of which, missions aren't very long, but you still can't save at all during them. Kinda ironic how the game that was designed for pick up and play lets you save less often than the console game. You most likely won't, but if you happen to die like once, then you'll have to replay the entire mission. I died once and it pissed me off. Because of this structure, you don't get ranked at the end of the game anymore based on how much money you collect, but you do get ranked after every mission, which had decent execution. The rankings work differently because there are more factors to getting the highest rank than just the money. You'll have to beat it quickly and not take a lot of damage, on top of getting a lot of cash. I found myself exploring every nook and cranny for money, as well as trying to take as little damage as possible for the highest rank, but I never really wanted to replay any of the missions for the sake of improving my score. Also, the missions can feel repetitive at times. I feel like a lot of them just boil down to you needing to go somewhere, but the ghost stole something, so you gotta go explore and find them. There's multiple missions in the game that are all about retrieving some kind of item that the polterpup stole, and all you do in these missions is go through rooms you've already explored and follow its footsteps, maybe fight some ghosts on the way, and catch the polterpup. These were probably my least favorite missions in the entire game. The first game wasn't very strong with this either, because most of the time, it was about collecting keys in a set order to access new rooms with the exception of Area 3. But at least in that game, you wouldn't be kicked out and forced to retrace all your steps. Overall, I'm not a fan of this mission-based structure. I'm fine with having different locations to explore, but I think the structure can make it repetitive at times, and I don't even think this game needed missions. Besides the replay value, my favorite part of the first game was capturing ghosts due to how exhilarating it felt, the ways in which they kept things fresh, and how much room there was to improve. So let's jump right in and look at how this game's combat holds up. To catch a ghost, you'll have to shock them with your flashlight, just like in the first game. Flashing them actually works differently due to Luigi's new strobe bulb. With the strobe bulb, you can charge up your flashlight and release it for one big flash that's great for capturing multiple ghosts. The main caveat is just how you're locked in one direction with it, so it's best to start charging up as you're backing into a corner or something, so you can catch a few ghosts at once. Once you stun a ghost, you can start sucking them up by pushing the circle pad in the opposite direction the ghost is pulling. It's just like a game of tug-of-war. In fact, it's a tug-of-war match that doesn't feel nearly as exhilarating as a tug-of-war in the first game, and it's all due to the circle pad. It doesn't feel nearly as fun to use as a proper analog stick, and I think the thrill of sucking up ghosts took a hit as a result. In its predecessor, ghosts were aggressive, and they would drag you all over the place if you weren't good. It is possible to get them backed into a corner, but it's hard to maintain since you really gotta push the analog stick back many times, which constantly gives them a slight chance of escaping your grasp, so it's a risky maneuver that can pay off with a good reward. You can't really shake the circle pad to shave off more health in this game. You'll mostly just be holding back in one direction. The ghosts may swerve around a few times to try and throw you off, but maintaining your grasp isn't hard. Some people cut it some slack due to it being a 3DS game, but it didn't have to be on this handheld at all. I know the Wii U wasn't performing well, but that was still an option that would have allowed the team at Next Level Games to make for more fun, thrilling, and precise tug-of-war in Dark Moon. In general, ghosts feel a lot less aggressive because they aren't always chasing you like in the first game. Sometimes they just sit there. Having other ghosts attack and interrupt you is still a threat, and is in fact the main thing you'll need to avoid while pulling back against ghosts, but you can jump while sucking to avoid attacks, and it comes at the risk of resetting your power surge bar. Don't do what I did and forget it exists for most of the game. As you pull back against the ghost, your power surge bar will start to fill up, and it's a key part of the combat. The more you fill it up, you can reach 3 different levels that take longer to fill up, and each one does more damage, going from 10 to 20 to 50. If you manage to finish off a ghost's health with a power surge, you're actually rewarded with some money that depends on which level your surge was, ranging from just a few coins to a few gold bars. In my opinion, the main challenge of the combat was about trying to stun as many ghosts as possible at one given time, and being able to maintain my grasp long enough to use a big power surge to kill them and get rewarded with a lot of cash. But what about the ghosts themselves? I thought the enemy variety was one of the supporting factors that made Luigi's Mansion's ghost busting so fun, and here the ghost variety is alright. I'll say this now, I think the first game had a better variety, but let's go over all the types you'll encounter, starting off with the most basic ones, the greenies. These are the cookie cutter ghosts, like the gold ones in the first game. They're the weakest and don't do much besides attack. They can only really be a threat when they are paired with other stronger ghosts. Speaking of stronger, slammers are like greenies, but stronger. They pack more punch, have a lot more health, and are overall harder to capture. They also have a ranged clap attack. The hiders will hide in some furniture, so you must shake that furniture down and flash them before they run somewhere else. They can also throw objects from their hiding spot on occasion, but they don't really have a lot of health, so they're only really a threat when paired with other ghosts. Sneakers can be rather annoying because they don't attack much, and instead prioritize scaring Luigi and getting rid of your grasp on other ghosts. Sometimes they can be hard to see coming since they are usually invisible. These are the kind of guys you'd want to take out first. Creepers are mostly just traps that you may walk into because they have like no health but take the form of puddles, so they may catch you off guard every now and then. And these also don't show up much. Wow, those are all the normal ghosts already? Do you see what I mean when I said the first game had a better variety? Not only does that game have more ghosts, but that game is way shorter too. And okay, there technically are more types of ghosts, mainly just variations of these enemies. Firstly, every one of these ghosts has a stronger form that has much more health and higher damage. By the last mansion, they'll be the only types you'll encounter. Also, the greenies have a lot of variants, such as the ones that wield weapons where you have to bait them into attacking to stun them. The ghosts that have some sort of protection you must vacuum to really start dealing damage. Some more substantial variants include the mummies that will run into you after you flash them. You capture them by baiting them into running into a wall, removing their costume, and finally sucking them up. You can also destroy their armor by having them run into fire, but these can be kinda tough to deal with in large groups. There's also the knights that wield swords but are quite easy to evade. To expose them, you have to make them walk onto a carpet and flip it over, and these carpets are only found in the treacherous mansion. And there are a few little mini-boss ghosts, like the gobbers, which are quite uncommon. They actually don't even move when you're sucking them up, but they have a lot of health and will spit goo at you, so you have to dodge those while trying to capture them. Poltergeists are also like mini-bosses, but they aren't very notable. They can throw stuff at you and play the piano. I think that's it. Another layer of the first game's enemy variety was in the portrait ghosts. Trying to capture them was usually like a puzzle. The ways in which you have to expose them would usually take advantage of the rooms they reside in, and overall they add a lot of variety. Does Dark Moon have portrait ghosts?
No.
Why would they remove them? They are all their own unique characters and they added so much variety to the gameplay. Having an equivalent to these portrait ghosts would be nothing but beneficial because it would improve Dark Moon's lack of personality and strengthen the focus on puzzle solving. And for some reason, there's like one group of ghosts that are very similar to portrait ghosts, and I'm talking about the three sisters from B-3. They have designs that kind of resemble humans with the clothing and stuff, and trying to take them out is like a puzzle. You just have to spin around to stun them, but capturing one can be somewhat tough due to how often the others attack and their damage. But like, why were these kind of ghosts not more common? I don't get it, man. Lastly, you have bosses, which vary in quality a lot. Some are kinda good, but others are boring. Excluding the two boos you fight, every boss fight is against a possessor ghost who possesses a different thing. But once you expose them, it's the exact same ballgame. You literally just hold the circle pad in a singular direction because they don't fight back at all. And unlike the first game where the amount of HP you shave off depends on your skill, here you're basically forced to have to do it 3 times, and I don't like that. The first spider boss is mostly just a puzzle rather than a boss, but it is a pretty interesting puzzle. The second boss has attacks that are very easy to dodge, so you'll mostly just be running around. Speaking of which, the rest of the level before the boss is actually one of the worst parts in the entire game. It's literally a guessing game where you're thrown all the way down the stairs if you guess wrong. You can see the next few ones ahead of you sometimes, but comparing those two options is still like trash versus garbage. The third boss is literally just a gauntlet of enemies, and you occasionally fight the possessor ghost. You'd think you would have to do it before the clock cycle ends, but if you fail to do do it in time, it literally just resets the wave. The fourth boss has this shooter segment where you have to aim and hit all of the pieces of the boss, but it gets farther away after each shot, so it's all about timing it properly. Eventually, getting the timing can be quite tough, and keeping the damn crosshair still is a challenge on its own because it uses the gyroscope. Do other people have this issue? The last boss is just about getting all of the knights to slip on carpets, and for the last phase, it becomes really big. Now, for the other two bosses, to kill a big boo, you have to wait for it to attack and be vulnerable, so you can grab its tongue and aim it at the drill of the train. Once the other boos are exposed, you gotta use the dark light to reveal them and shoot them at the targets on the train. The boss is pretty neat, but I don't know why it's not just called Boolossus. If it's one Oh, fuck! If it's one big boo made up of other boos, that's Boolossus. The final boss with King Boo is fine, but pretty simple. Just make him get hit by the spike balls he launches into the air. In conclusion, some of the bosses are fine, but a few of them are just really boring in design and gameplay. And overall, that's all I have to say about the combat in Dark Moon. I've made it out to sound pretty disappointing, and in most ways, yeah, it is. The act of catching ghosts was more fun in the first game, and it does a much better job at keeping things fresh. However, I do still think fighting ghosts in Dark Moon is fun. I like trying to flash as many as possible and trying to suck them for a long time, so I can use a power surge and be rewarded with a lot of money. But I also think it got repetitive after a certain point, since the first two mansions already show you every kind of ghost you'll be encountering. And the rooms never shake things up. It can only really be hard when there's a lot of ghosts. My main gripe with the combat was just the fact this game was on 3DS. Putting this on the Wii U would have allowed for more engaging combat, and enemies could be more aggressive since your control isn't neutered. But in conclusion, it's fun, but it could be a lot more fun. Another core part of the gameplay is exploration. I'd say this game puts more of an emphasis on exploration than the first game. While it did exist in that game, it was mostly about exploring new rooms to fight ghosts, and the puzzle solving was fairly light. In Dark Moon, you'll be exploring and solving puzzles quite often. More often than you will be capturing ghosts, actually. To help with exploration, Luigi's control has been altered a bit. Firstly, there's a run button for no reason. Guys, it's a 3D game, why is there a run button? More importantly, you're likely wondering how the overall control works when aiming because this handheld lacks a second analog stick, or at least it did in 2013. Well, when using your flashlight or vacuum, you can use the gyroscope to aim up and down. This sounds pretty shitty, but you don't have to tilt it very hard, so I thought it was fine. If you really don't want to use that, then use the X and B buttons to look up and down. The main new ability you'll be using is the dark light. Its purpose is to reveal hidden objects. If it looks like something is missing, then it means it probably is. So flash it and suck up these balls to reveal it. I don't really know what the balls add, to be honest. I guess you could say it sucks balls. Also, having the dark light overheat is completely pointless. What challenge is gained from forcing me to wait like 3 seconds to let it recharge? Luigi also has a modified flashlight, the strobe bulb. It was implemented into exploration quite simply. It'll mostly just be used to activate switches or something. The elemental stones are no longer in this game, and I kinda miss them. They were mostly used for occasional puzzles, as well as interacting with the environment, since their combat functionality wasn't all too compelling. If anything, it just forces you to go back and find the right elements sometimes. However, fire specifically is used for a lot of puzzles in this game, and I think some can be quite creative, like its use in the first boss. Speaking of puzzles, I think a lot of them can be quite interesting, and they really test your ingenuity. It definitely improves in the first game because that one didn't care much for puzzles. You'll be doing a lot of things, most of which involve gimmicks that are tied to specific areas. To give some examples, Haunted Towers features buckets that you can fill up with water, that can do things like weigh down objects and water plants. Most of the puzzles come from figuring out how to access water and what to use it on. Old Clockworks features puzzles with clocks and bombs that can activate switches or just blow stuff up. The Treacherous Mansion combines elements from all the previous mansions and features portals that you can carry objects through. So you'll be doing things like grabbing a log, going through a portal to light it on fire, and going through another portal to use that log to melt some snow. Also, except for the first one, all the other locations have missions that are about escorting toads somewhere, and puzzles come from trying to traverse with them due to things like a toad having an irrational fear of gears. Why did Gadd send you here then? Being the first location, Gloomy Manor isn't anything special. It feels very handholdy at first, and there aren't a lot of memorable things about it. The setting is just a normal mansion, and most of the ghosts you fight are really easy. The entire place is a tutorial, frankly, so it can be boring at times, to be honest. The first game's tutorial was over in like 10 minutes, but this game's tutorial is way too long in my opinion. Gadd calls you so damn much in this mansion, you'll be very thankful the ringtone is at least catchy. Haunted Towers is one of the best looking places in this game, and I think it has good gimmicks when it comes to puzzle solving, but there's a lot of padding in this one. After the first mission, you gotta use the pinwheel gate to get to the big tree, but then a bunch of ghosts steal it. After the mission where you retrieve the pieces, you then need to find a key inside of the big tree, but you find a toad, so you just spend the rest of the mission escorting him to safety. Then the next mission is about actually finding the key, but after you find it, the polterpup steals it. So the following mission is about going through rooms you've already been to just to get the key from the dog. One of the weakest parts of the game, to be honest. I think the game starts to rise in quality with the third location, Old Clockworks. Every mansion has at least some missions that are just filler, and this one does have some, including another polterpup mission, but not nearly as bad as the last one. It has good puzzle solving with the gears and the bombs, and overall this mansion just feels a lot better to play. Secret Mine is another mansion that is pretty good, but for some reason it's the shortest in the game, with only 3 missions and a boss. And fortunately, those missions are right to the point. There's no polterpup around here, and it never feels like you have to waste time retrieving something you already got. And just like the mansions before this one, it has great theming and puzzle solving. Out of all the mansions, I definitely had the most fun playing through the Treacherous Mansion, the last one. It feels like a culmination of everything you've learned so far, with combat that can get quite tense, and puzzle solving that borrows elements from all the previous mansions. It's also mostly free of filler. Your key gets stolen in the very first mission by that damn dog, but unlike the others where it's the very last mission, it's actually the first mission, so it's still an opportunity to explore new areas. The game also does trick you into thinking you're gonna fight King Boo when it's actually Boo Lossus, Big Boo, but I think the boss is neat, so I don't really care. It has some fun missions, and overall, it's everything the other mansions should have been. Oh yeah, boos are also in this game, and I'm putting it in the segment for exploration rather than combat because the main aspect of boo collecting is just finding them. Every mission has a boo somewhere, and unlike the first game where the real challenge lies in being able to catch them before they can get away, the challenge here is just trying to find them with your dark light. Your reward for catching all the boos in a mansion is a bonus level that is just about catching all the ghosts as fast as possible. I never unlocked any of these because I didn't really feel compelled to do so. Maybe that would change if the game gave me a gem worth $20 million. Speaking of something I wasn't compelled to collect, every mansion has a bunch of gems scattered around the place. You'll really have to explore to find some of them, and I think finding them can be fun. However, the main reason why I don't care about them is that you don't get jack shit for finding them, besides a fucking statue of Luigi. Also, why the hell don't these equate to money? They're literally gems! That's what they did in the first game. That would give players a great incentive to want to find these things. And on that note, let's talk about how money functions in this game. In Luigi's Mansion, everything you do was connected back to the main goal of racking up a lot of cash. You explore a lot, you get some money. You're really good at catching portrait ghosts, you'll get a lot of pearls. You catch all the boos, you get a lot of money. You take damage, you lose a bit of money. See what I mean? Collecting as much money as possible to get the highest rank is the exact reason why I've replayed the first game like 7 times, even though I got the A rank on most of those playthroughs. Racking up cash is an element of Dark Moon, but it's not nearly as prominent as the first game's used for it. First of all, there's no endgame ranking. This is probably due to the mission structure. You do get ranked after every mission, but it's mostly by your overall performance as well as money. To get 3 stars, you can't take a lot of damage and it has to be kind of fast, in addition to collecting as much treasure as possible. As I said earlier, I never cared for replaying missions. How do you get money? Well, one of the main ways you'll get money is just by exploring. The game rewards your curiosity with money, and if you examine some interesting spots, sometimes you'll get a lot of money. In some objects, you can also find golden dog bones that are worth like $200 if you finish a level, but they also revive you whenever you die. It was pretty handy that one time I actually died. Another method of collecting money is by just being good at ghost busting. If you kill a ghost with a power surge, you'll be rewarded with a lot of money, and you also get some extra money if you do it with multiple ghosts. You could also say this game does a better job at incentivizing you to get money because there's actual rewards besides a better house. Your upgrades for the Poltergust 5000 are locked behind how much money you've collected in total. You can also use that money to upgrade the dark light for some reason. I think they were really scrambling to have more money upgrades, so they made you extend how long you can use the dark light. Now, I do think trying to acquire a lot of cash can be fun, and it's especially rewarding whenever you catch multiple ghosts or find a secret, but I still think the first game did it a lot better. Money was basically your high score. The entire game was designed around being replayed to get better and better at the game's mechanics, so you can get more money. In Dark Moon, it's kinda just something you collect, like coins in Super Mario Bros. But it's not integral to the game game design. And in general, money not being nearly as prominent makes this game not nearly as replayable. And on top of that, this game took me 12 hours to complete, when the first game would take 4.5 at most. From this, you can really tell they were trying to do their own thing, rather than making a proper sequel that expands on the elements in the first game. I guess this was because the main thing that was criticized in Luigi's Mansion was the length, but then again, that was only the critics. Those who have actually sat down and replayed the game could agree it's great in that aspect. Since gaming has recently been favoring AAA and unforgettable story experiences, I guess they thought a short but replayable experience like the first game wouldn't survive in today's industry, so they had to change the direction of this game. In general, I think that statement sums up my overall thoughts on the game. It has some elements from its predecessor, but Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon mostly tries to do its own thing. It's not a very faithful sequel, and because of that, it's disappointing. I do think this game does have better exploration and puzzles because it tests your ingenuity a lot more often, but that isn't what I knew the first game for. I knew Luigi's Mansion as a masterpiece that had unique and thrilling combat I still haven't gotten tired of yet, personality at the wazoo, and an extremely replayable experience, due to how the game encourages you to get better at its mechanics. And when it comes to what the first game did best, Dark Moon fumbles in holding a candle to it. Also, I think the first game had more personality in the soundtrack thanks to that unique sounding twang you'd hear in songs like the Results and Credits theme, but that game's soundtrack had a more unique sound than the good but generic compositions of this game. And on top of that, it has its own issues, like the intrusive and unnecessary mission structure, lots of padding, repetitious gameplay, and some bosses being boring. I've said this many times, but I'll say it again. This game would have benefited from being on a home console like the Wii U. It would have allowed for combat that's more accurate to the first game, and a structure like the first game, rather than this mission structure that just makes you retread the same ground and listen to EGAT talk all the damn time. I know I've shat on this game a lot throughout this review, but I'd still say it's like a 7 out of 10. Exploration is enjoyable, Luigi is a joy to watch, and the combat is still fun. Part of me wants to give this game a lower score because as a sequel, it's definitely not a 7 out of 10, but that would probably be biased. This is hard to do, especially if you love Luigi's Mansion as much as I do, but to truly appreciate Dark Moon, you kinda have to view it as its own game. I think the game is still good, but it's a disappointing sequel, that's for sure.